talk a little bit about our weekend, and in a very appropriate training that we went through, preaching from darkness. The gospel that Nicole read, as you know, the lectionary goes in a 3-year cycle. So 3 years ago is when we last read this gospel, and I got to read it. It's when we first opened up the chapel. And it seemed so appropriate because it has to do with salt. And Bronco is a chef, and I remember my words vividly about how you are indeed the salt of the earth. And it wasn't just he, it was he and his wife. Two of the best chefs, two of the best people, wow. Two of the best. True spirits of God that I have ever known. We hear that, or that we are told, that time heals all wounds.
No, that's not true.
And it's not true.
It's not true.
It's not. Nicole and I spent our training in something called Preaching from Darkness. And the lesson of the day, and I'll let Nicole expand upon it, was that, we should come to church for many reasons. But we are so quick to light a candle, even right before Christmas when we celebrate Advent. We can't wait to light that first candle because we can't bear to be in darkness. We can't bear to be in pain. But sometimes it's okay. Sometimes that's what we're supposed to be. Because that gives honor to those that we've loved so much. In CPE, there's a beautiful, beautiful saying that explains why we feel the way we do. And the saying goes, great suffering is the price we pay for great love. And Bronco and Leah, out of all the people I have come to know, you two are close, truly had great love. I never saw them argue. I always saw them happy. I always saw great love. So today, I am not ending with a happy note, because it's not a happy occasion for us. It is for Leah and for all of those that we know and love that are in heaven. I believe that with all my heart. But today is a day for us, preaching from darkness. I'll go gift for Leah to be placed today at hers. Nicole will finish.
It's going to be difficult to follow that up. There's a lot of emotion in this room right now, and rightly so.
Yeah.
It's a hard day honoring the people that we've lost and that we love. Father Joe and I, we learned a lot. We learned a lot at that conference that we went to, and it was a surprisingly moving day. You didn't necessarily expect that 8 hours in a lecture would be as moving as they were, but they were. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what we discussed at the conference, and about darkness, which is something that we very often turn away from because it's uncomfortable, because it isn't easy. Sometimes it's so hard to sit in that darkness. It's so hard to admit that we are feeling pain. It's so hard to admit that the people around us are feeling pain, that the easiest thing to do is to close our eyes and walk away and to say, we're fine, we're okay, you're okay, let's light a candle and move on. And that's not always the best approach, is it?
No.
It's not always what is really going to heal that pain for us, turning aside from anything, pretending that you don't have an open wound instead of tending to it, isn't really going to do anything for that wound. I have been very, very blessed in my life to have not experienced too much loss. Yet, I have certainly experienced darkness, I've experienced loss with others, but I've been very blessed to not really know that pain in your heart on a first-hand basis, but there is one thing that happened these past few days that really did make me think about loss and made me think about closing your eyes to it. Actually, two things, serendipitously enough, this last weekend, but one of them happened the day that Father Joe and I went to that conference. Many of you heard about Tessa Majors. She was an 18-year-old student at Barnard, across the street from where I go to school at Columbia, recently murdered in Morningside Park. She was fatally stabbed to death by three, I think, young people that wanted to rob her, and I took that news very hard. Most of my community took that news very hard, but for whatever reason, it was really difficult for me to live with the thought that could happen to a young woman so close to one of the greatest institutions in the world, that she could have come to college for the first time, been away from her family for the first time, and been cut down the way that she was. And that was definitely a little moment of darkness for me, and I certainly closed my eyes to it, turned away from it, because it was easier to do so than dealing with what it means to be a young woman in New York City, what it means to have absurdity in your life, things that you can't understand, you don't know why God lets happen. And Father Joe, the morning of the conference, actually walked me past the site of Tessa Major's death, where there's a memorial, there are flowers, candles, there's a Barnard sweatshirt, some teddy bears. And I had not been there yet. I had actually avoided that street pretty pointedly since this happened about a month ago. And we just stood there quietly for a few minutes, and I don't think I would have confronted that if he hadn't gone with me, if he hadn't been the one to suggest that we go and we confront that and we sit there in silence and just contemplate that darkness for a little bit. And that's really the point that I want to make, is that we all experience so much pain in life, and sometimes we can't confront it, sometimes we can't sit in it, and sometimes it's very lonely. But part of what we do, part of being human, part of being in relationship, is knowing how to crawl into that darkness with somebody else and just sit in it. Pain isn't taken away by platitudes. You can't heal somebody's heart just by saying, have hope, there is light. Sometimes you can't heal somebody's heart by saying, God still loves you. The point is that we sit in that darkness quietly with somebody, that God sits in that darkness quietly with us. And sometimes that's all it takes. Sometimes that's all it takes, is to sit in darkness in solidarity with somebody else, and to understand that things might not get better, things might not feel better, but you are not alone. You have people in that darkness that love you. You have a creator in that darkness that loves you and feels your pain with you. And a God with scars is never going to turn away from yours.